I was right on those two teams. So I whiffed on the Steelers and Ravens. I nailed the Browns, and I nailed the Bengals. Why doesn't anybody ever say, Colin, you really did a good job on the Bengals-Browns? I don't get it.
I don't really. I can't get into people that are like crazy about predictions.
I know. We're guessing here.
Were your predictions perfect? I haven't been able to see where are your predictions for the beginning of the season. I don't know. We're all just guessing. Stuff happens.
They're educated guesses, but Baltimore's unraveled. All right.
Yeah, this is not what we expected.
Mark Schlereth, Fox Sports NFL analyst. He actually did the Bronco game yesterday. Of course, 3 Super Bowls. Mark Schlereth, multiple Pro Bowler. So he just drove down the road, stayed at a hotel. Those are the best games to do. So let's start with this. So the NFL said, listen, we're not pushing your game back. Your quarterbacks, that's a you problem. Were you disappointed? Do you think the NFL's sending a message? How did it fall for you? How did it land for you, Mark?
Well, I think first and foremost, in regards to the Broncos, I don't think people are actually trying to be malicious in their intent to deceive the National Football League, right? Some guys didn't wear masks. Every one of us has walked out of their car and walked into the grocery store and said, oh, shoot, I left my mask in my car and went back to get it. I think there was some innocence in that. And so I think that's part of it. But you have to understand the NFL just put this mandate out. They said you've got to be vigilant in your mask wearing. It's 100% of the time. And I think there was kind of this sacrificial lamb kind of situation. Jimmy Johnson said this a long time ago when he was coaching the Dallas Cowboys. He said, listen, if the 4th-string running back falls asleep in meetings, I cut him. If Emmitt Smith falls asleep in meetings, we nudge him. Like that's the way it goes, right? And the Broncos are not a playoff team. They have created this situation for themselves. And I think they were made an example of. And that's the NFL. You put yourself in the situation. I think that's the one thing that you have to understand. You, as an organization, did not follow the protocol. You put yourself in this situation. Is it fair? No, it's not fair. Nothing's fair in life. And you put yourself in the situation, and you're going to be the sacrificial lamb, this sliding scale of justice, if you will. You're going to be the ones that punished and are made an example of.
So it's interesting because we know the Chiefs and the Steelers are good, but I think it is remarkable. The Saints are now 7-0 last 2 years with backup quarterbacks, and I don't think anybody in the league could do that. I know Kansas City had to use a backup last year, and they you can lose games that way. What do you make of Taysom Hill? It's interesting. He throws better than I thought he would. You can win games with him. What do you make of the Saints with Taysom Hill?
Well, I will tell you this. First and foremost, of all the games or all the teams that I have done this year, there is no team more talented than the New Orleans Saints, top to bottom, both offensively and defensively. So, they are a really good football team. Taysom Hill is an interesting cat. He's one of the most athletic, one of the most interesting players in the league in that when you look at him, he can play running back, he can play fullback, he can play the U tight end, the Y tight end, he can play the F slot receiver, and he can play quarterback. I mean, there's not a position on the football field that this guy can't play.
Right.
Now, from a timing standpoint, his timing was off in the passing game yesterday. It really was not good. There was a couple of throws that he just was hesitant about. I don't trust what I'm seeing. And therefore, he was a little late with the football yesterday. Yeah. That has got to be cleaned up. But that comes with playing, right? I mean, this guy, up until this point, he played multiple positions. And think about this. He walks into the facility, and he's in special teams meetings. He's a half hour late to the quarterback meetings. Then he's got to bounce over to the running back meetings, bounce to the tight end meetings. Oh, let's go to the wide receiver meeting. I mean, this is the most versatile player in all of football. So, I expect him to be a little bit late with some of his reads and some of his throws. So he's an interesting cat. He's an unbelievable, exceptional football player. And he is a guy that you can win with because you can do so many things from the quarterback position with him in there.
I was saying this earlier. My only knock on Kansas City, and I think it's unavoidable, is that they're so brilliant and they score so dramatically and sometimes with so little effort, and they strike so quickly that it is hard to have that sense of urgency every drive. And, last night, if you go look at the stat sheet, they dominate time of possession. They're great on third downs. They dominate first downs. Mahomes throws for 500 yards. Tyreek Hill has 270. And they win 27-24 because in the second half, they didn't move the ball much. You played on a couple of great teams. Explain to me that when scoring is sometimes so easy, is it hard to convince yourself out of a locker room, off a touchdown, hey, fellas, we got to grind her out here? Is that a real psychological warfare with yourself sometimes in this league?
Oh, I think that's part of it. I mean, I think there's also, you feel like you can score at any moment. You feel like, hey, man, we're so good that anytime we go out there, we could put a drive together. I remember playing a Dallas Cowboys team where we scored on our first 7 possessions. Like, touchdown, 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 touchdown. It was like easy. And so I think that's human nature. Mentally, you relax on a drive. You relax on a series. And those things happen to you. But I think the other thing that's real about this Kansas City team is complementary football. When you can score in 1 minute and 12 seconds, guess what happens to your defense? They're always out there.
Yeah.
They feel like they have always got to play. And so, when I went back through and I watched every defeat the Kansas City Chiefs had for the last 2 years, every one of them were similar in that the other team dominated the time of possession, whether it was they ran it down their throats or whether it was a short passing game, they just got first downs and completions. And ultimately, every one of those games, even though it was like 40-20 in time of possession, every one of those games came down to the last drive. And every one of those games was like 30-29. I mean, it was ridiculous, right? Except one was like a 19-13 game was Indianapolis a couple of years ago. But the bottom line is, there's a formula. You've got to possess the ball. You got to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. You've got to do all those things. And guess what? They're still going to score 30. So every time you get in the red zone, you better score touchdowns. And I like that pressure is immense. And they just know, heck, listen, man, even if we're down, we can score in 47 seconds. That's who we are as an offense. It was like when John Elway walked in the huddle. We could be down by 2 touchdowns, and you got them right where you want them. We're good. Let's go.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Speaking of John Elway, he had Dan Reeves, and they're both very successful, but there was, it didn't quite jive, right? And then he goes to Mike Shanahan. They become best friends, workout buddies, all that. It works. So I'm not blaming Brady or Arians, but they're different cats. And you were, and sometimes like their lifestyles are different, their personalities. Brady is much more reluctant to talk publicly. He's more political. Arians is just let her rip guy. And I watch him and I think to myself, I don't worry about Brady's age and his arm and all that stuff. I don't care. But I do think there's a personality thing here. They see the world differently. And I mean, you take me to your Elway Reeves thing. Is it possible these cats are just never going to be cohesive?
Yeah, I think he even goes beyond that. I think it was Peyton Manning and Gary Kubiak. When Gary Kubiak came here, Peyton Manning as the quarterback of the Denver Broncos. And there was always this juxtaposition of 2 philosophies.
Right.
And they never really quite jived. And, Peyton Manning wanted to be in shotgun and run everything from the shotgun, and he wanted to call his own plays type of thing and say, hey, what's best for us in this particular situation? Because that's what he did all in his Indianapolis career and what he had done under John Fox. And Gary Kubiak said, no, we want to limit that stuff. We want to put you, underneath the center. That's where our running game functions the best. And those 2 butted heads. And then Peyton Manning gets injured and he spends 7 weeks on the bench. And when he comes back, there's really more of an ability or more of or less of a reluctancy to basically stick or adhere for Gary Kubiak to exactly what they did. They found a happy medium where Peyton actually kind of ran the offense. Now, that team won a Super Bowl, but that team was really based on its defense. And I just think when I watch Tampa, and I've done several of their games, they're like Brady the last couple of years has always had that easy answer, that check down to the running backs. That's something that's short and something, that they're running option routes underneath to Julian Edelman. And Bruce Arians is one of those guys, no risk it, no biscuit. I want to push it down the football field. And I don't think there's been enough easy answers in this offense for Brady to operate efficiently like he normally does. Yeah. And so there is this kind of butting of the heads, kind of philosophical butting of the head.